First at 5. From the University of Florida's College of Journalism and Communications, you're watching WUFT News.
The barrier island towns destroyed by Hurricane Ian face a tough road forward. No power, hit or miss running water, and a 20-day estimate for a temporary road. NBC News reports at least 83 deaths in Florida are now blamed on Hurricane Ian. Welcome to WUFT News First at 5. I'm Amy Galo.
And I'm Isabella Leandri. We start with a closer look at those barrier islands near Fort Myers. A team of UF student journalists visited Lee County over the weekend to get a first-hand look at the devastation. WUFT's Chris Will found people from Alachua County lending a hand.
Pine Island was among the many locations impacted by Hurricane Ian. The small farming community saw its buildings, homes, and roads destroyed by the nearly 150-mile-an-hour winds. Residents say water and power have been out on the island since the storm hit. Paul Dinger is a retired resident of the community.
I don't know what's going on. I'm sitting here in the dark for 2 days.
And Dinger isn't alone. All the residents on the island have been cut off from the mainland after the roads and bridges were overcome by water, leaving the island isolated.
Here at the Yucatan Waterfront Restaurant, a place meant for food and fun is now focused on the evacuation.
As many residents try to leave the island, volunteers across the state lend their hand in the effort. Among those driving into the peak of the damage is Gainesville native Chris Murphy.
Knowing that we had the resources to do something, we just decided to come down and work the weekend to help some people out.
Murphy made the trip to Southwest Florida with his daughter and her husband.
Caught an hour or two of sleep in the Publix parking lot, and now we're at it.
Along with the family, the U.S. Coast Guard and other first responders across the state have turned their resources to the region to help any way they can.
The community comes together in every natural disaster we have. We have the strongest knit community around anywhere. When Katrina happened over there in New Orleans, we sent 50 crews, trucks, boats over there to help them, and they're paying us back the same way. I've seen people from Mississippi, Louisiana.
Even Dinger, who's been impacted by the storm, has taken to the roads to make them safe for travel. Despite that, he still feels lost.
You know, I just don't know what to do. I'm willing to lend a hand if I knew who to lend it to.
Joining the many hands, mobilizing to help those impacted by the storm. On Pine Island, Chris Will, WUFT News.
The U.S. Coast Guard will continue to run residents between the island to the mainland until safe transportation can be restored. The goal is to have power restored by next Sunday, but that's only for buildings where there's still infrastructure to safely hook up again. NBC's Chris Pallone reports from Fort Myers Beach.
5 days after Ian struck, people still stranded in the hardest hit areas of Southwest Florida are at a loss.
My biggest concern is what to do.
Unsure how to get help to start piecing together what's left of their lives.
We can't even rent a car. There's nothing available. You know, generators, you can't get a generator. Our generator, we had a fabulous one, went underwater. So that's gone.
Yeah,
so
understood.
You know, so we need some help somehow.
We're gonna get
search teams going door to door to figure out who lived and who died, trying to reassure storm victims help is on the way.
The most important thing is you're alive.
Yes, we
Your
are.
family's alive.
Yeah, we are.
All
We're safe.
things can be replaced.
Rescuers spent the weekend taking more than 2,000 people and 150 pets to safety. They also found more people who did not survive. The number of people killed now approaching triple digits. Most fatalities happened in Lee County, where officials bristle at the suggestion they were too late issuing a mandatory evacuation order.
The second that we could and should issue that order, I'm confident that we did. Again, we wouldn't change anything. And also, I also understand that there are some people that don't want to leave their homes. We cannot force them to leave their homes. That's their homes. But we can do everything we can to educate them and make sure they're aware.
The mayor of one of Ian's hardest hit areas, Fort Myers Beach, says he has compassion for those who couldn't or wouldn't leave before the storm.
And for those that don't go, you know, and have suffered the consequences of that, I feel for them. You know, when it's time to go, you got to go.
As the cleanup continues, people here continue to search for any bit of normality they can find. Chris Pallone, NBC News, Fort Myers Beach, Florida.
The Hurricane Center is tracking 2 more disturbances far out in the Atlantic.
Mariana Larsen has more on that and our immediate forecast here at home.
Right now we are tracking 2 areas of invest in the Atlantic right now. The first one, passing over South America, has a low chance of development. This is a good sign. This means that after tomorrow there is a strong chance that it won't turn into anything more serious. However, this one by Africa shows that it has a higher chance of turning into something more powerful. However, please keep in mind that it is too early to determine what these storms are going to look like, but we are going to keep an eye on them as this week moves on. Taking a look at a more local standpoint, tonight is going to be a lot cooler and it is going to feel pretty nice with temperatures in the lows of the upper 50s. Back to you.
A North Central Florida church is organizing a donation drive to help affected families. The Deeper Purpose Community Church is accepting donations to help hard-hit areas in Charlotte and Lee counties. Monetary donations in items like bottled water, non-perishable food, and clothes are being collected. They are accepting donations from 1 to 3 p.m. tomorrow and Wednesday. Pastor Adam Joy says the drive has united unaffected communities in helping their South Florida neighbors.
The entire state, the entire nation is praying for them, and the entire area here, just all over the state of Florida, we're coming together to, bring them some relief and just get them as much help as we can.
Joy says they've received about 100 donations so far, but he hopes to fill 3 utility trailers. Staff and volunteers will drive the donations down early Thursday morning.
Seeing images of disaster and destruction can be difficult to process. In the wake of the aftermath of Hurricane Ian, some of the images are almost inevitable. They may fill your timeline, or you may see them in text threads. When you open your news app, they're likely there waiting for you. WUFT's Jameshia Carroll spent the day talking with experts about the effects of mental health after the storm.
As Hurricane Ian began to move, mental health quickly came to mind.
Well, I've actually treated people with post-traumatic stress disorder.
Licensed mental health counselor John Picathley says the PTSD was directly related to weather situations.
They've survived major storms. Hurricane Katrina, Hurricane Ivan are 2 storms that I remember specifically working with people who had survived those storms.
Picathley says major weather events can heighten anxiety and depression. Alachua County Crisis Center Clinical Supervisor Amanda De Lorenzo Garcia agrees is not uncommon.
It's part of being a human that when we're afraid, when there's a fear, and it's a rightful fear. It makes sense. A hurricane is a very severe storm and it threatens our safety. So of course our response is to feel anxious and afraid. There is a shift in our mental health because our schedules are thrown off. Our normalcy is gone.
The loss of normalcy can usher uncertainty.
We're dealing with factors that we can't fully prepare for.
Jameshia Carroll, WUFT News.
Experts we spoke to say that if it's hard for you to view the images, you may want to consider mental health breaks. You may want to watch how much information you consume during trauma. Experts advise talking about your feelings or practicing stress management and relaxation techniques. You're also encouraged to be mindful of triggers.
The Alachua County Crisis Center has a 24-hour crisis line if you need assistance coping with traumatic instances. That number is 352-264-6789.
Coming up on WUFT News First at 5, small businesses in the Fort Myers community are looking to rebuild their livelihood as they survey the damage Hurricane Ian brought to the area.
One business owner shares his story. Stay with us.
You're watching WUFT TV News.
President Joe Biden and the First Lady are on a hurricane-damaged tour starting in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is still grappling with the fallout from Hurricane Fiona, which struck the island on September 16th. In addition to flooding and collapsed bridges, almost all of the U.S. territory was left without power, and 25 people died, according to Puerto Rico's health department. Fiona hit almost exactly 5 years after Hurricane Maria devastated the island's power grid.
President Biden will visit Florida Wednesday to get the overview of extreme damage here. The devastation at Fort Myers Beach and Sanibel Island is already in full view, but locals are also noticing the loss of iconic shops and restaurants that used to add character to some small towns. Near Cape Coral, Matlacha Island was also reduced to rubble. The fishing village had become known for its colorful buildings, artist shops, and food nooks. The old docks and wooden buildings were no match for Hurricane Ian, so the community of about 800 people is now displaced. People are vowing to one day rebuild. The road to Pine Island is washed out and buckled, and a temporary road is now a top priority for the Florida Department of Transportation.
A case in point is a survivor who plans to rebuild his small business in Iona on the Fort Myers side of the bay. WFT's Macy Goldfarb shows us his new reality.
Produce. It's John Turlup's livelihood. So much so, he made the last owner of Paradise Produce promise the business to him once he retired. And for the last 8 years, it's been all his.
This is all I know what to do. I mean, this is how we make our living. This is how I employ 10 employees. This is how we employ, 10 families.
After Cat 4 Hurricane Ian ravaged Fort Myers and nearby coastal towns Wednesday, flooded roads kept Turlup from getting back to his stand for 2 days. What he arrived to was a shell of his business. Nearly all his produce washed away.
There's everything from A to Z here. I mean, we had 4 coolers here loaded with avocados and peppers and tomatoes and you name it, we had it.
All of the business's 4 delivery trucks left in front of the stand to block wind floated off in floodwaters. Just 2 seen down the road completely totaled. Shelves, tables, supplies, now just debris Turlup and his employees will need to clean up. One of them, Craig Makala, says he didn't expect things to be so bad, just hoped to come back and still be able to work.
I expect to come back, do some cleanup, hopefully have some work. So cleanup is work now.
But the building itself, the same one that's housed the business for over 50 years, still stands.
I know I can do it again. We can do it. If the shell is here, we can do it.
A staple of the Fort Myers area, Paradise is still getting business from regulars hoping to help out. It just doesn't have any produce to sell. Yet. But Turlup says as soon as the stand is cleaned up and has power, they'll be back in business.
As long as people are healthy, we can rebuild. That's the main key. And we will. We're strong Floridians. We will.
Turlup hopes the return to normalcy will come by the end of the month. But as a strong Floridian, he's determined he'll get there. Macy Goldfarb, WUFT News.
It's just devastating seeing the images coming out of the Fort Myers area right now.
It really is. As you'll see here in Gainesville, we are expected to have calmer weather this week. WUFT's Mariana Larsen tells us more.
Thankfully, we don't have any rain in our forecast for this week. However, we are expecting to see some cooler temperatures. Stay tuned and I'll tell you more.
You're watching WUFT TV News.
Taking a look at our campus cam right now, it is looking pretty nice outside. You can see some scattered clouds across the horizon, but that is not stopping the sun from shining through. Taking a look at our IR satellite right now, you can see there are no heavy clouds really over all across Florida, and it is looking pretty decent in terms of cloud cover. And it is also feeling pretty decent as well. Let's take a look at our current temperatures right now. Here in Gainesville, it is 75, Ocala 78, and Lake City is 71. It's kind of cool up there. And speaking of cool, we are gonna see another cooler night. I know I'm excited and I hope you are too. If you're not, I recommend grabbing an extra blanket tonight because we are going to see low temperatures in the lower 50s tonight. It's going to be partly cloudy tonight and pretty cool, so just keep an eye on that. Tomorrow we are going to have another cool morning, and as we approach the afternoon, it is going to warm up just a little bit, but it is going to feel a lot nicer than our summer temperatures. Now looking at our highs for tomorrow, Gainesville is going to be at 80, Ocala is going to be at 80 as well, and Bronson is going to be at 81. Now looking at our tropics one more time, we can see that there are 2 areas of invest right now in the Atlantic. This one over South America by our side is at a low chance of development, but over here by Africa we have a higher chance of development. Again, it is too early to determine what these storms are going to look like as the week goes on, but we are going to keep an eye on both of them and track them, and we'll let you know as soon as we have more updates. Taking a look at our 6-day forecast for the week, it is going to look cool and nice all week long. We're going to see highs around the 80s, and we're going to have lows around the 50s and 60s. If you ask me, this is the perfect introduction to fall. Back to you.
You're watching WUFT TV News.
Welcome back to sports. I'm Jensen Young. The Gators had their own rendition of Sunday football for the first time since January 2nd, 1977. The offense got off to a hot start, leading to a score of 35-3 at halftime in favor of the Gators over the Eastern Washington Eagles. In the second half, many young players got snaps for Florida, including quarterback Jalen Kitna, who said after the game that he was appreciative to the coaching staff for this opportunity. The defense also saw a lot of players who rarely get playing time. In total, 32 different players recorded at least one tackle. Gator coach Billy Napier says that a lot of growth happened in this game with the amount of players that got onto the field.
There's a lot of young players that got a chance to play for the first time today. Jalen Kitna would be a prime example of a guy that I thought, first time between the lines, really did a lot of good things. And there's a number of other young freshmen that played. So a lot of growth there.
Coming up this weekend, Florida will host the Missouri Tigers. Missouri welcomed the defending national champion Georgia Bulldogs on Saturday, and they gave it everything that they had. The Tigers had the lead over the Dogs from the very first score until just 4 minutes left in the game. They shined on defense, forcing 2 turnovers and holding Georgia to just 6 points in the first half. The Gators and Tigers played this Saturday in the Swamp, with both programs still searching for their first SEC win. Kickoff will be at noon. And a reminder, the kickoff time for the LSU game has been announced, and that will be 7 p.m. in Gainesville. We have some high school football games in the area that are being made up from last week due to the hurricane. Kicking off this evening, the Eastside Rams play the North Marion Colts. Eastside is 2-1 this season, while North Marion is 4-1. That game is at 6:30. Kicking off at 7, the Newbury Panthers will take on the Willis Red Devils. Newbury is 3-1, while Williston is undefeated at 4-0. On at 7:30 tonight is Oak Hall and Bronson, the battle of the Eagles. Oak Hall is 4-0, while Bronson is still searching for their first win this season, sitting at 0-5. Finally, the PK Young Blue Wave and the Mount Dora Bulldogs game is currently underway. PK Young enters tonight 1-3 in the season, while Mount Dora sits at 500 this year with a 2-2 record.
Thanks, Jensen. Before we go, one last check on the weather.
We are going to have another nice feeling day tomorrow with highs in the 80s here in Gainesville, also highs in the 80s in Ocala. We are going to have a cold start to our morning, so just keep that in mind as you're getting ready for work. Here's a look at our 6-day forecast. We have highs in the 80s all week and lows in the 50s and 60s. Back to you.
Thanks, Mariana. And to wrap up, we've put together a few of the most moving images we've seen coming out of the Southwest area.
As you'll see, people are pulling together to remain safe, strong, and united.
BBC World News is next, and the PBS NewsHour is coming up at 7.
But your Florida news is always on at WUFT.org. Have a good night.